I call the clerk.
Order of the day, resumption of debate on the urgency motion moved by Senator David Pocock and others.
Senator Anandaraja.
Thank you, Deputy President, and I thank Senator Pocock and colleagues for moving this important motion on CSIRO. CSIRO is indeed a national asset, and as a peak institution, public institution in this country devoted to science, we will always support it. This stands in contrast to the climate deniers on the opposite side, who now seem to have discovered a genuine interest in science. It's entirely hypocritical for them to be now clutching their pearls and their chests and wringing their hands in anguish over imminent job cuts at CSIRO. You have no credibility whatsoever. The story of CSIRO is not one of government job cuts. It is, unfortunately, a story of mismanagement. Indeed, 4 days ago, a whistleblower declared to the Fairfax papers that there were problems evident at CSIRO 5 years ago. The Morrison government, during the pandemic, injected an additional $459 million over 4 years into CSIRO. And this funding boost led to a huge increase in CSIRO's headcount. The headcount swelled by nearly 1,400 staff between 2020 and 2024. So in other words, CSIRO went on a recruitment drive, a massive recruitment drive with this additional funding. What also happened during that time is that employee benefits, CSIRO's largest expense, jumped by 30% since 2019. What is unfortunate here is that, and this is a quote from this former senior staff member who says, there were no real projects for them to work on. And so when 2024 clocked on and there was effectively a funding cliff, and this near $500 million that had been injected into CSIRO had been effectively squandered. Now, the new management have come on under the stewardship of eminent scientist and a fine Australian, Professor Doug Hilton, and he's had to do some housekeeping. Him and the independent board that stands at arm's length from the government have had to do some housekeeping. I just want to make it clear, any institution, whether it be scientific or otherwise, that receives public funds must be held accountable. It must be held accountable. Even though it is a peak scientific body, it is not a protected species. No one that receives taxpayer dollars in this really challenging fiscal environment is a protected species. And so the board did a review, the first strategic review in 15 years, and that tells you everything you need to know, and decided that there needed to be a realignment of CSIRO's priorities with our national priorities of this government. And so, as a result, unfortunately, I think due to the mismanagement of the previous administration, a number of people are now likely to lose their jobs. I will say, in terms of these people, bear in mind that this Albanese Labor government is establishing a number of statutory bodies next year. From January of next year, the Centres for Disease Control will kick off, the first ever Australian Centres for Disease Control. And that is going to require people with expertise in infectious diseases. Professor Hilton has already declared that a priority will be One Health, animal health as well as human health and environmental health. And this will be an absolute focus of the CDC. There's no tackling infectious diseases unless you tackle threats to animals as well as the broader environment, because that's how pandemics emerge. In addition, provided this parliament works together and passes our environmental laws, we will be standing up a National Environmental Protection Agency. So those workers who are likely to lose their jobs in the environmental aspect and sector of CSIRO will have the potential to enter an EPA and an Environment Information Australia, an EIA as well. We would need their expertise. In addition to that, we have just announced the establishment of a National AI Safety Institute, a body that will rest within the department of industry. And that will absolutely need scientists with expertise in AI and quantum and mathematics to be able to, again, scan the horizon for threats. So there are opportunities here for those
your time
scientists.
Has expired. I'll call Senator Hodgins-May.
Thank you, Chair. Science isn't failing. The government is failing science. They ignore warnings from climate scientists, sideline experts, and now they're letting our national science agency be gutted. Australia has a scientific legacy to be proud of. From pioneering global agriculture to world-leading Antarctic research to medical breakthroughs like the cochlear implant. First Nations people have stewarded land, water and biodiversity with scientific knowledge stretching back 50,000 years. We are a nation built on science. CSIRO scientists carry that legacy today. They're on the front line of the biggest challenges of our time, from bushfire modelling to fighting antimicrobial resistance to breakthrough work on renewable energy. These are the people building our future. And what does Labor do? They hollow them out. This government should be buffering and celebrating Australian research, not bulldozing it, including by tackling one of the biggest structural barriers in the field, gender inequity in STEM leadership. If we want women to lead in STEM, we need to back them before they hit the glass ceiling. Programs like Wild for STEM show exactly what's possible when we invest early and properly. 100% of participants in STEM. More than half secure new roles or promotions, and nearly a third land board positions within a year. Australian scientists punch way above their weight, even under insecure funding, gender gaps and a global political climate increasingly allergic to the truth. Scientists are the people who can pull us out of climate disasters, pandemics and extinction crises. They get us out of the messes that politicians help to create. So here's the message. Do not slash science. You protect it, you invest in it and you back the people who make Australia smarter and safer.
Senator Scarr.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. Well, what extraordinary contributions from the other side of the chamber defending these job cuts at CSIRO. Quite extraordinary. It's the last Speaker for the Australian Labor Party referred to the fact that the Morrison government had given so many hundreds of millions of dollars extra money to CSIRO that they'd actually gone out and hired scientists to do scientific work. Therefore, it's the Morrison government's fault that they're now being made redundant. Extraordinary argument. And then we had the minister attend this chamber and refuse to provide details with respect to these job cuts and refer to the Abbott government. Well, let me give you a quote from the CSIRO Staff Association of the CPSU. This is what they're saying in relation to these job cuts. I quote, "This is a very sad day for publicly funded science in this country. They are now responsible for cuts to public science that exceed the Abbott government." These aren't my words, these are the words of the CSIRO Staff Association of the CPSU. They are now responsible for cuts to public science that exceed the Abbott government. These are some of the worst cuts the CSIRO has ever seen. We don't need a crystal ball to know these cuts will hurt. They'll hurt families, farmers and our future. End quote. That's what the CSIRO Staff Association is saying, the CPSU. I wonder what former Senator Kim Carr would say about this. He railed against the job cuts and the cuts that were introduced by the Abbott coalition government. He railed against them. What must he be thinking to hear the contributions from those opposite? He must be absolutely aghast as a senator who served in this place and was such a strong advocate for public science. I want to read to you a quote from Senator Pearce from a speech he gave on 11 June 1925, speaking to the legislation which actually established the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. And he talked about the importance of CSIRO. He talked about the importance of science for the public good. And I want to read you this quote. "The need for the establishment of a Council for Scientific and Industrial Research has been discussed on many occasions, and the arguments for national research are well known. In all civilised countries, it is recognised that from time to time national problems arise, the solution of which cannot be left to private enterprise. Now, this is me having to inform those opposite of the need for public science funding. He goes on. The problems are of such magnitude and of such general interest and importance that their investigation is appropriately regarded as a matter for government action." End quote. That was the case that was made for CSIRO, for adequate funding of CSIRO back on 11 June 1925, when legislation was introduced establishing the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. And yet we have those opposite blaming everyone except themselves for these catastrophic job cuts. And I admire the contribution that Senator Whish-Wilson made. And Senator Whish-Wilson has been a very strong advocate in relation to public science, and he outlined the important areas of research which need to be funded, including in the environmental space. It is extraordinary. These job cuts are extraordinary. We're looking at 300 to 350 full-time equivalent positions. It's just extraordinary. And this is coming from those opposite who railed against lower cuts that were introduced by the Abbott coalition government. And we now have the CPSU, the CSIRO Staff Association, actually calling out a Labor government with respect to the dramatic nature of these cuts. And it doesn't really matter in relation to other statutory authorities that are going to be set up. CSIRO, when it was set up, and you read the speeches leading to the establishment of CSIRO, the senators referred to CSIRO as the nation's national laboratory and talked about the importance of public science to support our industries, to deal with biosecurity threats, to deal with the whole range of issues which merit an investment in public science. So I say to the government, they need to consider these cuts very seriously.
Thank you, Senator Scarr.